The United States of America $half 1776 to 1976 D, commonly known as the bicentennial Kennedy half dollar, is one of the most historically celebrated coins ever produced by the U.S. Mint, created specifically to mark the 200th anniversary of American independence. This special coin belongs to the bicentennial coinage series, minted only in 1975 and 1976, but all of them bear the dual date, 1776 to 1976, to symbolize the span of 200 years since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. The coin minted with the D Mint mark comes from the Denver Mint, one of the main facilities responsible for mass production of U.S. circulating coinage during the 20th century. What makes this half dollar particularly notable is the United States government's desire to create a national symbol that would unite citizens in pride, commemoration, and patriotic reflection during the bicentennial celebrations. To achieve this, the U.S. Mint launched a design competition, inviting artists to create reverse designs for the quarter, half dollar, and dollar that would capture the spirit of American independence. The winning reverse design for the half dollar was created by Seth G. Huntington, who depicted Independence Hall, the historic building in Philadelphia where the Declaration of Independence was debated and adopted in 1776. This building is one of the most sacred symbols of the American national narrative, representing liberty, self-governance, democratic ideals, and the courage of the founding generation. The reverse also features the inscriptions Independence Hall, 200 Years of Freedom, United States of America, and half dollar, all arranged in a way that highlights the national spirit behind the coin's creation. On the obverse, the coin continues to feature the portrait of President John F. Kennedy, originally sculpted by Gilroy Roberts after Kennedy's tragic assassination in 1963. Keeping Kennedy on the obverse for the bicentennial half dollar symbolized continuity, leadership, and the modern American commitment to liberty. The obverse shows the inscriptions Liberty and In God We Trust, along with the dual date 1776 to 1976, which replaces the usual single-year date normally found on circulating U.S. coins. These bicentennial coins were not only for collection. Millions were also released into general circulation, allowing ordinary Americans to physically hold a piece of national heritage. The Denver Mint D was especially known for its high-volume output, producing over 287 million bicentennial half dollars, which made the Denver issue common in circulation but still culturally significant. In addition to circulation-strike copper-nickel-clad coins, special collector versions were produced in 40% silver, although the silver versions are more limited and usually packaged in special mint or proof sets. The circulation coins, like the 1776 to 1976 D half dollar, consist of an outer layer of copper-nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its familiar silver-gray appearance. Weighing 11.34 grams and measuring 30.6 millimeters in diameter, the coin retains the same specifications as the regular Kennedy half dollar series. Historically, the bicentennial program represented more than just coinage. It was an entire national movement. Throughout 1975 and 1976, the U.S. government and American citizens celebrated the bicentennial with parades, educational programs, reenactments, fireworks, monuments, and patriotic events across all 50 states. The special coinage became one of the most widely distributed souvenirs of this national celebration. Families collected them, banks gave them out in rolls, and for many Americans these coins served as personal mementos of the 200-year anniversary of the nation's birth. Even today, the 1776 to 1976 half dollar remains one of the most recognized and commonly kept commemorative issues. While most examples, especially circulated ones, hold mostly sentimental rather than high monetary value, they continue to fascinate collectors for their history, symbolism, and connection to a monumental moment in American culture. A well-preserved uncirculated or certified high-grade Denver issue can, however, carry modest premium value depending on strike sharpness and condition. The 40% silver versions, especially in proof quality, are more desirable to collectors and are valued higher due to metal content and lower mintage. For numismatists, this coin offers a perfect combination of art, history, and patriotic emotion. Kennedy's enduring legacy on the obverse, the powerful image of Independence Hall on the reverse, and a dual-dated inscription that binds the nation's founding in 1776 with its modern celebration in 1976. Overall, the 1776 to 1976 D bicentennial Kennedy half-dollar stands as a timeless reminder of America's struggle for liberty, the sacrifices made by its founders, and the evolution of the nation across 2 centuries. Its widespread circulation meant that nearly every American of that era held one at some point, making it not only a collectible object, but also a shared cultural artifact. Whether appreciated for its historical depth, patriotic symbolism, numismatic interest, or personal nostalgia, this coin remains one of the most iconic commemorative circulation issues ever produced by the United States Mint, an enduring piece of American identity preserved in Next Top 2. The United States of America half-dollar, dated 1983 D, bearing the proud inscription Liberty, represents one of the later circulating years of the John F. Kennedy half-dollar series, a coin that holds deep emotional, historical, and cultural weight in American numismatics because it directly commemorates the tragic assassination of President John F. Kennedy in November 1963. Although the series began in 1964, the 1983 D issue belongs to the modern-era clad half-dollars struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark placed just above the date. By 1983, the Kennedy half-dollar had already gone through 2 decades of transformations, beginning first as a 90% silver coin, 1964, then 40% silver, 1965 to 1970, before shifting permanently to the copper-nickel-clad composition starting in 1971. The 1983 D half-dollar is thus produced from the modern clad formula, an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, creating the signature sandwich-style appearance familiar to late 20th century U.S. coinage. What makes the 1983 D coin especially interesting is that it was minted during a period when half-dollars were no longer widely used in daily commerce. Large-scale circulation of half-dollars had been declining since the early 1970s due to hoarding, limited public demand, and the rising preference for smaller denominations like quarters and dollar bills. As a result, although the Denver Mint struck millions of half-dollars in 1983, most went to bank storage, casino use, or were saved in rolls, and relatively few entered regular public transaction systems. The coin's obverse features the enduring portrait of President John F. Kennedy, designed by the legendary U.S. Mint chief sculptor-engraver Gilroy Roberts, who created the design almost immediately after Kennedy's death. Roberts based the portrait on a presidential medal he had sculpted earlier, capturing Kennedy's youthful strength, leadership, and the inspirational aura that defined his presidency. The word liberty arcs across the top, symbolizing the core national ideal that Kennedy himself passionately championed. The motto "I in God We Trust" sits in its traditional place beneath Kennedy's chin, and the date 1983, along with the D mint mark, completes the obverse details. On the reverse, sculpted by Frank Gasparo, we see one of the most impressive reverse designs in modern U.S. coinage. A detailed representation of the presidential seal, featuring a majestic heraldic eagle with a shield on its chest, clutching an olive branch in one talon and a bundle of arrows in the other, symbolizing the dual power of peace and military preparedness. Surrounding the eagle are rays, stars, and the legends United States of America and half-dollar, radiating a sense of national unity and strength during the Cold War era when this design held particular patriotic resonance. From a historical context, 1983 was a dynamic period in the United States under President Ronald Reagan. The American economy was recovering from the inflationary 1970s, and public sentiment was cautiously optimistic. Coin production levels at the Denver Mint were strong, as the U.S. Mint continued refining industrial minting capability and quality control technologies. The 1983 D half-dollar therefore reflects both technological confidence and the continued ceremonial importance of the Kennedy series. Even though half-dollars weren't heavily used, the Mint kept producing them because the design had become iconic and because government agencies, collectors, and casinos still required limited quantities. Numismatically, the 1983 D is considered a common-date-clad half-dollar, not rare in circulated condition, but it becomes more interesting in high grades. Well-preserved uncirculated examples showing sharp strikes, frosty luster, and minimal contact marks, especially those certified MS 65 and above, receive collector attention because Denver Mint coins from the early 1980s sometimes show inconsistent striking quality. The minting process, dye preparation, and metal flow characteristics of the period give some 1983 D coins weaker details in Kennedy's hair and the eagle's feathers, making sharply struck versions noticeably more desirable. Economically, the intrinsic metal value of the 1983 D half-dollar is low because it contains no silver, but its historical and commemorative symbolism, combined with its role in the late circulation era of half-dollars, gives it a respected place in U.S. coin collecting. The coin represents a bridge between the early heroic sentiment of the Kennedy Memorial period and the later years when half-dollars were mostly produced for numismatic purposes rather than daily money use. For many collectors, the 1983 D half-dollar also serves as a nostalgic reminder of a time when American coinage still carried bold artistic expressions tied to national identity, before the era of modern rotating designs and state-themed coins. Its physical weight, metallic ring, and classic presidential imagery evoke the traditional feel of older U.S. currency systems. In summary, the 1983 D Kennedy half-dollar is a powerful blend of American history, presidential memory, Cold War-era symbolism, artistic excellence, and numismatic evolution. It stands not only as a piece of currency, but also as a cultural artifact marking the resilience of the Kennedy legacy 2 decades after his assassination. Its clad construction tells the story of changing economic times. Its preservation in coin rolls and collections reflects the declining role of half-dollars in circulation, and its design continues to honor one of the most admired presidents in U.S. history. For collectors and historians alike, the 1983 D half-dollar remains an essential chapter in the long narrative of American coinage, embodying both tradition and transition in a single, elegant piece of metal next top 3. The United States of America half-dollar dated 1991 D, proudly carrying the national inscriptions Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the Denver Mint's D Mint mark, is part of the enduring and emotionally significant John F. Kennedy half-dollar series, a coin first introduced in 1964 as a tribute to President John F. Kennedy after his assassination. By the time the 1991 D half-dollar was minted, the series had already become one of the most recognizable and symbolically important coinage programs in the United States, representing not only the memory of a charismatic president, but also a period of American unity, optimism, and national mourning. Minted at the Denver Mint, the 1991 D issue was struck in the standard modern copper-nickel clad composition, an outer alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, continuing the composition that had been used since 1971 when silver was permanently removed from circulating half-dollars. This clad metal gives the coin its familiar silvery appearance despite having no precious metal content. The 1991 D belongs to an era when half-dollars were produced in substantial quantities but rarely used in daily commerce, because by the 1980s and early 1990s, the American public had shifted toward quarters, dollar bills, and electronic payments, leaving half-dollars circulating mostly in casinos, armored car orders, and limited banking channels. The obverse continues to feature the iconic portrait of President John F. Kennedy, sculpted by chief engraver Gilroy Roberts, who adapted the design from a presidential medal created shortly before Kennedy's death. The portrait highlights Kennedy's forward-looking expression, his characteristic hair, and a confident profile that symbolized both Cold War leadership and the visionary ideals of the early 1960s. Roberts' design remains one of the most beloved in modern U.S. coinage. Surrounding the portrait, the inscription Liberty appears prominently across the upper rim, representing the American commitment to freedom and democratic ideals, while "In God We Trust" sits beneath Kennedy's chin, continuing the long tradition of religious motto placement on U.S. currency. The date 1991 rests at the bottom, with the D Mint mark nearby, signifying that this particular coin was struck in Denver, a mint known for its high-volume, high-precision output. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's powerful adaptation of the presidential seal captures the grandeur of American iconography. A bold heraldic eagle holding an olive branch symbolizing peace in its right talon and a bundle of arrows representing defense readiness in its left. Above the eagle's head floats a field of stars and a banner reading E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one. The surrounding legends United States of America and half-dollar complete a design that conveys authority, national pride, and continuity across decades. Historically, the The 1991 D half dollar was minted during a transitional moment in the United States. The early 1990s marked the end of the Cold War, the aftermath of the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the opening of a new era in American foreign policy. George H.W. Bush was president, the Gulf War had recently concluded, and the nation was experiencing both economic challenges and technological advancement. The U.S. Mint during this period was modernizing its machinery, improving die preparation techniques, and refining strikes, creating coins with sharper details and stronger luster compared to earlier decades. Still, half dollars from the early 1990s occasionally show weak strikes, particularly in Kennedy's hair and the eagle's feathers, making well-struck uncirculated specimens more valuable to collectors. The Denver Mint produced millions of 1991 D half dollars, but because public circulation of the denomination was relatively low, many remained stored in Federal Reserve vaults or were released only in limited quantities, contributing to a numismatic pattern where most existing examples are found in uncirculated or lightly circulated condition. Numismatically, the 1991 D Kennedy half dollar is considered a common date-clad coin, but its interest lies in high-grade preservation, mint-set origins, and exceptional quality. In circulated condition, it carries mostly face value, but in mint-state grades such as MS-64, MS-65, and higher, the coin becomes significantly more desirable, especially when exhibiting bright mint luster and minimal bag marks. Collectors appreciate this year for its role in the broader Kennedy series, its historical timing, and the slow decline of half-dollar circulation in everyday American life. Although not a silver coin, the 1991 D half dollar still carries sentimental and historical value because it represents the continued cultural reverence for President Kennedy nearly 30 years after his death. Its weight, size, and iconic imagery make it a nostalgic reminder of traditional U.S. coinage before digital payments and inflation gradually changed Americans' relationship with physical money. In essence, the 1991 D Kennedy half dollar is more than just a modern-clad coin. It is a symbol of American identity, presidential legacy, and the evolution of national coinage in the late 20th century. It reflects a nation in transition, the technological modernization of the U.S. Mint, and the lasting emotional power of the Kennedy name. With its classic design, strong historical connections, and place in an era when half dollars were disappearing from pockets, but not from collectors' hearts, the 1991 D half dollar stands as a durable piece.